Hi, mister. How are you? My name is Daniel Flores, and I'm going to present you the lesson plan number 1 from my first term report. The topic is report speech with infinitives, orders, or request. The first thing of my lesson plan was the objectives. My four objectives were: the listening objective was incorporate questioning techniques. The second objective about speaking was ask important information. Number 3, reading objective was recognize difference between direct and indirect speech. And the last one was the writing objective was for statement in indirect speech. The next part of my lesson plan was the methodology and strategies. First, the methodology. I'm going to mention the two methodologies that I used during this lesson plan and in the class. First was the flipped classroom, high tech. That means that students do problem solving and exercises in class. So they have to solve what they have received. Okay? I mean the worksheets or exercise online. The next methodology that I used was the high tech approach to learning. That means that students use many different types of technology to aid students in the classroom learning. Remember that nowadays all the teachers are using this methodology because we are not receiving class or giving class in person, just online classes. The next part was the strategy. The strategies that I used were two: competition. What do I mean with competition? Strategy means that the student can be useful in motivating some students to learn. So they are especially effective in the classroom if they are tied to a collaborative practice. Okay? The next strategy that I used was find the rule. Find the rule. That means that students are given sets of examples that demonstrate a single rule. Like, for example, I before E is Z after C. An example. And asked to find and state the rule. They have to state a rule. So just I give examples and at the end they state the rule. Okay? The next part of my lesson plan was the anticipatory set. Okay? The activity that I used in this part of my lesson plan is first on the whiteboard of Zoom, because all of my classes were virtual classes, online classes. On the whiteboard of Zoom, I wrote husband and wife, or brother and sisters, or boss and employee. Elicit any other common relationship pairs the learners can think of. For example, dog and cat, etc. Okay? Brainstorm some things that these pairs might argue about. Okay? Another example is do the laundry, borrow a DVD, leave work early, sleep in the sunny spot on the floor. Uh, and after doing this on the whiteboard of Zoom, they have they had to create short dialogues from one of these situations. This is the anticipatory set before the class, the content of the class start. Okay, this is just anticipate what we are going to teach in the class. Okay, the next part, sorry, the main teaching input was now the content of the class. Present the students a slide share. This is one of my tools that I commonly use when teaching the class online. First, slide share. Present the slide share that contains the principal changes in report speech. For example, will becomes would, present perfect becomes past perfect, present simple becomes past simple, etc. The principal changes. That slideshare contains that. Then, ask students to practice the report speech by beginning with a report speech worksheet. Okay? After that, once students have become comfortable with the direct to indirect speech transformation, practice reporting through the use of the interviews, as in this report speech lesson plan. As students become familiar with the report speech, introduce a wider range of reporting verbs. You know, that ask, say, tell, and a wider range of reporting verb I gave them. And to help students to move post, say, and tell, because these were the main verb to use the report speech. Okay? And after doing this part of the class, I continue with the modeling part. The modeling part, I chose the provide feedback. I provide feedback during the class. That means that check in with students as they work in and reinforce their positive efforts. It is important. We know that it's important to help students to get confidence in their own, because it will help them a lot at the moment of doing an exercise. Not to think too much and trust in themselves. Next, and when they seem stuck, I always remind them what to try. Okay, and at the end of the class, I ask a few reflection questions like, what helped you today when you were stuck at the moment of reporting an order request. And the other question that I used was, what will you try tomorrow if something is challenging? Okay, this is the modeling. And the guided practice, in the next part of my lesson plan, the guided practice, I presented on the screen of Zoom. We know that the Zoom was a specific tool that I used during the class. But now I share my screen on Zoom session, the report request and order worksheet. Okay, so they edit it online. Okay, so I looked what they were writing on my presentation. So in order to practice, this is This is in order to practice and let them write in the answers. Okay? And obviously, they receive my guideline. My guideline. So the teacher's guideline, it is imperative in this part. And this activity will be more challenging if students try to do it by their own. Okay? The next part of my lesson plan was the independent practice. This part is the challenging part. I call it the challenging part because this is the moment when the students have to challenge their knowledge. So, in this part, I told students to look back to their earlier dialogues that they looked on the whiteboard that I share my screen, so that they can remember about the topic. The first part is look back to their dialogues to remember in case they forgot it. Okay? Then I sent a link of an exercise online. Okay? And I told them to send me a screenshot with the result after finishing the activity. This is for measuring their knowledge learned. Okay? The next part of my lesson plan was playing a game. But this game has no materials. So was a different game. Start by telling students all cameras and microphones must be on during this part of the Zoom session. Then start by saying an order or request to a random student. And after that, the selected students have to pick another student until everyone has participated. And the students that have finished the activity in faster will win. So remember that they got 10 seconds. They have got 10 seconds to report what their classmates said. Okay? And the student that have fewer mistakes win. This is the part of assessment. And the closing review of this part of my lesson plan was as the students to write down one issue they still have with report speech, with infinitives, and send it. And I told it to send it to me by direct message of Zoom, because there is an option that Zoom gives you. And the purpose of this part at the end of the class of this plan is to address any lingering question. They may exist, and to ensure that the students fully understand before proceeding to the next lesson. It is important to do this before continue with the next lesson. There is a strong likelihood that multiple students will have the same or similar concerns. This would be a good opportunity to allow students to answer many of the questions of their classmates. So this is my lesson plan number 1 about report speech with infinitives, order or request. I hope that you like my lesson plan, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you. Take care.